Next Chapter Podcasts.
With a Venmo debit card, you can Venmo more than just your friends. You can use your balance in so many ways. You can Venmo everything. Need gas? You can Venmo this. How about snacks? You can Venmo that. Your favorite band's merch? You can Venmo this. Or their next show? You can Venmo that. Visit venmo.me/debit to learn more.
You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo.
The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. pursuant to license by MasterCard International Incorporated. Card may be used everywhere MasterCard is accepted. Venmo purchase restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Polestar. There's only one true way to experience the all-electric luxury SUV Polestar 3, and that's to take a test drive. It can go from 0 to 60 in as little as 4.8 seconds with the dynamic handling of a sports car. But to truly understand how it commands the road, you need to be behind the wheel. Up to 350 miles of range, the 3D surround sound system by Bowers & Wilkins. It's all something you have to experience to believe. So book your test drive for Polestar 3 today at polestar.com.
Hi, my name is Michael Goodfriend, and I'm an executive producer of Run Boy Run, written by Mfiniso Odafia and produced by Next Chapter Podcasts with the Huntington Theater in Boston. A couple of weeks ago, I had a chance to sit down and talk with two extraordinary artists who collaborated with me on the creation of this series, actress Abigail Onwunali and director Christopher Edwards. Abigail is a multifaceted Nigerian-American artist known for her versatility and passion. Her play Jewel was one of Red Bull Theater's short New Play Festival winners, and her slam poems have been viewed worldwide. She played leading roles in the Ufot family cycle plays The Grove and Sojourners at the Huntington, and has been on Broadway in Jaja's African Hair Braiding for Manhattan Theater Club. She plays the role of Sister in Run Boy Run. Christopher Edwards is the artistic director of the Actors Shakespeare Project in Boston, where he has directed multiple critically acclaimed productions. He's a senior lecturer at Boston University's School of Theater and has worked nationally and internationally, off-Broadway, on London's West End, and at regional theaters across the country. He's the director of the Run Boy Run podcast series. We had a wide-ranging conversation about Run Boy Run, making theater, finding your voice as an artist, and the alchemy of storytelling, just to name a few of the subjects we covered. I hope you'll enjoy listening. Okay, full disclosure here. I was traveling in rural Wisconsin when we recorded this conversation, and my internet was spotty, to put it mildly. The only place I could get decent coverage was on the back porch of a farmhouse I was staying in at the time. So please excuse the occasional bird calls, cricket chirps, and dog barks. Also, Chris's feed had some weird glitch that we couldn't quite solve, where static noise would sort of grow and grow until he had to refresh the link on his browser. It's a little distracting at times, but I don't think it really deflects from what he's saying. Just bear with us through it all. I think you'll agree it's worth the quirks.
I want to start with you, Abigail, because you have a real history with this whole project, having done Sojourners in the Grove. Can you tell us who you played in those two plays and a little bit about those two plays specifically?
In Sojourners, I played Abasiama. And then in The Grove, I played her eldest daughter, Adiaga. And the process has been quite beautiful to be part of this like cycle in which you're playing mother and then you're playing the daughter of the mother you just played, and having to kind of detach the two, but also to understand that a little bit of Abasiama was in Adiaga anyway. And so there's a little bit of her and that I could bring back from Sojourners to here. And then Sister is a perfect blend of the two. And so it was quite beautiful to then hop into Run Boy Run right after The Grove and experience a little bit of the story of Disciple. Yeah.
So Run Boy Run picks up where in the cycle of plays?
Run Boy Run is the third play, but it picks up right after basically all the kids, right after the Grove, so right after all the kids have left the house. And it's in a weird place because it's kind of also in the world of where her portmanteau is happening too. It's kind of like simultaneously kind of like blending in a way. But I think that all the kids have left the house at this point, and Disciple and Abasiama have to sit with their marriage and themselves, and Abasiama really sees her husband in a way that she's never seen him before, as he's going through the PTSD of his childhood, and so yeah, that's kind of. I may be wrong. You have to ask the playwright because the playwright's good. Or Chris, you may know more than me, but I do think that it is in that little in between place where her portmanteau is happening probably simultaneously, and but it definitely years after everybody has left the home. All the children have left the home of Basiama and Disciple. Yeah.
So, finally, parents have a little bit of time together after the kids are out of the house, and that's when they look at each other and go like, who are you again? And the past and the present converge. Chris, tell us how this project landed in your lap, and what the experience was like for you coming into the process for the third play in the cycle.
My company had originally been in conversation around being part of the full cycle, but just due to timing and season planning and dates, we weren't able to make it work. So the artistic director of the Huntington, Loretta, reached out to me to see if I could possibly make the podcast's dates work. And I was able to shift some things around because I was feeling bad about it for a good year that I couldn't get on board with the program earlier, but it worked out. We shifted some dates. The Huntington shifted some dates, and it was a blessing. It was a beautiful process with a group of phenomenal actors. I think for many of us, it was a new format to try to deal with a play that is very theatrical and very visual. There are two worlds going on, as Abigail was saying. You have what's happening in, I believe, 2012, and then that's juxtaposed against what's happening during the Biafran War in Nigeria in 62, 63, I think it is. So, you don't have the luxury of saying, oh, now we're here, look to the right of the stage, and you're here. That said, it was really fun to really try to create a world just through sound. I had a great time doing it. It was certainly a challenge, but it was a joyful challenge.
Was this your first time directing an audio only production? I
had done a series a couple years back during COVID for Def Jam. It was called Here Comes the Break. It was a podcast about young people creating a musical podcast. And they did a really cool thing where they would bring in Def Jam's newest artists that they had signed, and these kids in high school would interview them as part of their podcast. So it was an episodic, but this is probably the third time I've done a sort of recorded thing. I mean, we were all doing that recording stuff during COVID. I think all of us had to wake up and go, hey, we don't have to do this, or we may never do anything again, so. But it was truly a joy. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the process, but also just about the beauty and integrity and work ethic of actors coming to a thing that we were all not real comfortable with. But none of that came into the room. It was a true joy. And Mfaniso she's amazing.
Abigail, I'm curious for you. You had been able to perform on stage, and then you switched over to this audio medium. What was it like for you as an actor to make that leap?
It was exciting and challenging, as Chris said. I do think there was something about it that was quite I'm so used to using my body. I'm so used to being like, oh, I'm showing you how I feel with my body. And I had to transition to using my voice to show the stress or to show the pain or, so, or to, we're fighting through things because we're going through war at the time. And so, if sister and boy are running, then you have to kind of show that you're running at the same time. And it's just something that I've always loved voiceover work. I've always wanted to be a part of it, but I'd never really sunk my teeth in it until that day. And I was like, oh, wow, this is exciting. You get to kind of you get to take your body, there's still the physicality, but you can't step too much or clap too much because it's going to mess up the mic. So you got to kind of do all that action, internally, and then show it through sound. And so that was quite fun to explore, for sure.
Did you feel like the journey was fulfilling for you artistically as an actor? Did it have the same sort of, give you that same sort of sense of having taken the journey with a character?
Yeah, it's a different way. It just felt different in terms of, I guess I couldn't really link with my my team in terms of the other actors in the space. So my scene partner, we can't really look at each other. We can't really be in it with each other, but we're in it with each other. So we have to kind of hear each other out in order for it to make it work. So it was just a different way of navigating that connection, but the connection was still there and it was quite potent. And I feel Chris you really helped us navigate that entire process quite smoothly, because even though I couldn't see and be let's talk, let's act and react, it still felt like we were acting and reacting in our voices. So we kind of internally channeled that. And it was, and I still felt a lot of fulfillment from it because I could still feel it within my gut that I was connecting to the people around me. I was even crying at some point when Mfaniso was like, there's something about the language that will lift the music of it. And when I started lifting the music of it, I felt it in my body and my soul, and I could connect to Chibuba, who was my scene partner at the time, and it was just quite beautiful. So yeah, I do think it's different, but it's still quite potent for sure.
Chris, how has the work that you've done in the past as a theater director, stage artist, where are the connections between your values as an artist and the work that you've been focused on creating theater in Boston? Can you talk about how they kind of connect to the tissue of Run Boy Run and the Ufot family cycle?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think as a director, a lot of the times what I'm focusing on usually is I'm really more interested in human connection. I like the craft of design. I love it. But inevitably at the end of the day, I'm like, what is this person saying and responding to and affecting? And how are they affecting the other person? So I'm always looking for the human condition in things. And as Abigail said, we had to really just rely on that. Couldn't look at the set to carry anything. We couldn't look at the lights to carry anything. We couldn't look at the costumes to carry anything. There was no audience there. You couldn't really have the give and take of the audience. So in a way, it was in my wheelhouse, but it was intensely in the wheelhouse. It was daunting and again, joyful in that way. And then the other thing about it is I also immensely trust actors. I am an actor. I adore actors. I think actors are some of the smartest, most empathetic individuals on the globe. And so oftentimes as a director, what I'll do is let me stay out of the way. And when you have actors as awesome as this group of actors were, you try to stay out of the way. The challenge with that is that there are so many variables that you can't stay out of the way. You gotta like, okay, I know like if this was in the theater, what you did would like just blow up and blossom. But in this space, we're not feeling it. And you, Michael, were really helpful in the booth around that and the mentorship, I think, that you gave. But I think at the end of the day, for me, it was let me find a way to help each one of these people pull their soul out into these incredible words that Infiniso has written. And I tend to do a lot of classical theater, or heightened text work, and Infiniso's work is that. So there were a lot of parallels between August Wilson, William Shakespeare, spoken word arts, hip hop, rap. It's all, just the meter of things and the way vowels work in the space, and how, as Abigail was saying, like letting the music of a vowel open up and what that can do emotionally for the actor and consequently for us as the listeners. So it dropped into the human place, I think, for me. And that's what I'm always trying to do. So I think we did a great job with that. I'll say they did a great job with that.
When we talk about your roles, right, there's Sojourners, The Grove, and Run Boy Run. Can you tell us a little bit about each of these characters in each of these plays that you portrayed, starting with Sojourners?
Sojourners, Abasiama is a woman who is coming into the States in hope to go back. So that Abasiama was one that was like very eager to get her degree and to come back home and to flourish in Nigeria. And so her goal is she's very much so that is the goal. That is what it's going to do. We're going to have this child in the States. We're going to have a child in the States. We're going to have the benefits of having a U.S. citizen child, and then we're going to go back home and we're going to prosper home, and we're going to take care of our child, and our child's going to be able to come to the States. It's a whole process, and so she's very to the book. She's very, this is what's going to happen, and then she learns so much about America in ways that through Moxie and then she meets Disciple and she's figuring out, wait, am I going to stay here? Do I even know what, you know what I mean? Like she's starting to question a lot. And then Adiaga is also a woman questioning. She's just, Adiaga feels closer to my heart because I am a first daughter. So I know the pressure of going to the best schools and making sure that your family is proud and having the graduation party that makes them go, I'm so proud of you. But then also battling the idea of how does she live up to who she really is without making her parents feel like she's betrayed them. So how does she live up to her ancestry, her queerness, her love for people, for the family around her, and trying to maintain that order, but also to be true to who she is. So that was also a challenge that I was like, this is different from Abasiama because Abasiama is law. Adiaga she's also battling law and wanting to live in her truth. And Sister is also somebody who's still, we must go by the book, but also there's something quite loving and motherly about her. So she sits very much so in Abasiama and Adiaga in a way that I wasn't expecting. I didn't expect to come into Sister thinking that I was gonna feel any of Abasiama or Adiaga, because she's from a whole different side of a different family. That's Disciple's family. But again, Disciple says, you remind me of my sister. You look like my sister. In Sojourners, he says, you have the same skin color as my sister. So there's something about Abasiama and Adiaga's lineage that is also in this woman who was born before both of them. So it's quite how Mfiniso is able to connect these. It's like a huge family tree that's just interconnected, and every single character has a placement to somebody else in this cycle, and it's quite gorgeous because I don't have to leave those characters behind. I can bring them with me.
this is an example to me of the sort of the alchemy of the storytelling that theater and podcasts and, to some extent, I guess, film and television are. That Chris, I wonder, as a director, is this common for you? Do you find that there's something about, like, it'd be interesting to know from Enfaniso, like, did Enfaniso even plan this, or did it sort of just spring from these strands that she was creating, and they take on a life of their own, like this sort of a discovery that Sister is a link between Abasiam and Arriaga that isn't written into the texts. It's something that you, as the artist, experience. And I wonder, Chris, for you as a maker of theater, do you experience this on the regular? Is this why you do what you do?
Yeah. Yeah, you do. It's I don't want to sound sort of weird or corny about it, but like there's this spirit, it's a spiritual thing that happens between people. And one of the things about particularly, I think all of the cycle, but Run Boy Run, is that things are happening in space and time at the same time and at different times. So it's sort of like quantum theory in that way, but like in the like spiritual world of many of the African in the diaspora, things that your family, the legacy of your family, your ancestors are there with you. And so when Abigail says that, I go, of course, because she's there. She might even be a part of, because she passed in the early 60s, so like where her spirit is and what do we learn from each other in the natural world, and what, like Western philosophy say the supernatural world. But we talked a lot about that there is no separation in that. And so sort of taking on the energy of things from the past and not knowing you're doing it because they're there always is kind of what we do as artists, actors, and directors when we come into a room. Like when you're with someone with an immense amount of energy, positive energy, it's hard not to like be infected by that. Like in the room listening to Abigail or listening to Enfoniso or Chike, it's hard not to take on some of that energy, because I truly do believe, and I'm not a religious person at all, that we are all connected through a network. And whether that's like science and DNA or it's something spiritual, I don't know, but I think that's part of what draws people to the art that we do, is the connection that happens in the space, in the process, and that's why many of us do it without making a lot of money doing it, like because it's an inherent intrinsic thing that happens between people, and it's hard to put your finger on what that is. And I even feel that way, even in the technical world, like sitting in a booth with you for, I can't remember how many hours we're in that booth, was like, I couldn't help but take on some of who you are. And I think artists, theater artists particularly, are highly empathetic people. So we breathe in each other and take in the energies. I don't know if that's answering your question, but
Yeah, very much so, I would say. And, I'm curious for you, Abigail, what was the calling? When did you feel the calling to be a storyteller, an actor, a theater creator?
I think I was always meant to be an actor, a storyteller. I think I was just scared about the career. I think I was just scared about the uncertainty. But I have been writing most of my life. I have been performing most of my life. My mother used to tell me all the time that I was the most dramatic human being ever. Like there would be one time I'd just be like, I'd have a good day. And then like, she was like, she just, one day she said she saw me like walking to the kitchen, and like something dropped on my foot. I was very young. She said something dropped on my foot, and I thought that it was like going to be the end of the world. So I just, I fell on the floor and cried. And, da-da-da. And then she said, "You're okay." She was like, "There's nothing there. You're fine." And then I got up and just kept going on with my day. And I said, "Well, of course. She's always been a drama queen. She's always been in it. She's always loved performance." And then starting to do it in a little bit in college, it was like speech and debate was how I found interpretation, and to take books and literature and to turn it into 10-minute pieces and then compete with people countrywide. And then eventually I became a slam poet. And I just always knew that my work was going to lead, my voice was going to lead me to performance. And there's no better feeling than to be on a stage every day and not know what's going to happen. You don't know what else. Some days, I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, I think I'm going to do the same thing. I'm saying the same line, but for some reason today, the line is just different. And for some reason today, the person that I'm doing the scene with is just really emotional and really in the piece. And now I'm saying these words in a completely different way, or this is the last show, or this is the first, like, we don't know what's going to happen. It's something about this art form cannot be replicated. And it's unfortunate that it doesn't pay enough, but it's also, I would do it for no money.
How about you, Chris? When did you feel the calling to do this work?
Very similar to Abigail, actually. I've always been sort of more quiet and like less emotionally out there, except when I would get on stage. Like all this stuff would just start coming out of me that I didn't understand. And I knew as like a young person, I was into like dancing and stuff when I was young, and was a backup dancer for a minute and was a break dancer. And I used to draw, and I was really artistic, but I was an only child. So I was just kind of living in my own world. And I too went to college and was like, I don't even think I knew we had a theater department in high school. I was like, what is that? But like, thought I wanted to go to law school. So I was like, well, I got to take an art class. Unfortunately, where I went to college, they had one requirement for art. You just had to take one. And I was like, well, let me just take an acting class, because then I'd be able to speak in front of people. Because I was anxious around that. And then just stuff started to come out of me that I was like, wow, I've been wanting to say this for so long. And, I came from an area where I grew up, where I had a lot of friends in the 80s, late 80s and early 90s who died, and of those friends, like 90% of them died due to like drug dealing and, crack cocaine and gangbanging. And a lot of them were, young men of color who had nothing but possibility in front of them, but had no way to express what they wanted to say. So when I found this like way to express myself, it just occurred to me as I got older. It's like, oh wow, if these friends I would have had a way to express what they were feeling, they might be here today. And so I sort of gave that credence and fed that and sort of nurtured that, and that sort of sent me along my way. But I was also afraid of the career, of what it meant. You know what I mean? Like, how do you make a living doing this thing? If you're not a movie star, and even then, you may not be able to make a living, But just I was able to say things that I wasn't able to say in life on stage.
And you ended up founding a theater company. Am I right?
Well,
You're
not the
leading
founder
a
of this theater company that I'm in. I had a small sort of educational theater company when I was in New York, where we would just sort of take classics and like put spins on them, and like do Greeks with spoken word and Shakespeare and hip hop and all of that stuff. And then when I had a daughter, I was like, well, I don't know that I can act as much. I need to like be around my daughter. So I started to do more directing. and then got into administration and worked for a couple of theater companies, and now I run a company, but I didn't found the company. It's been around for about 20 years.
Do you have a mission with this theater company that you could put into words?
I think our mission is, I'll just put it, this is the way that I try to say it, is that classical work for so long in the history of the world has been has not invited everybody to that party. Then maybe, in the 80s, 90s, people got invited to the party, but then they weren't asked to dance. And then so that started to happen. But so what I'm trying to do is like throw the party, invite everybody, ask everybody to dance, and allow for the music to change because there are different people in the room. That, just an unconditional welcome to what the work is. So I think that's what we try to do. We do a lot of stuff with incarcerated youth. We have in-school programs as well, after-school programs for youth. And then we do anywhere from 3 to 5 shows a year in Boston.
Abigail, you are not just an actor. You said you're a poet, and you are also a playwright. Can you talk a little bit about the work you're doing in both those realms?
Yes, I've been doing poetry for a while now. So most of the time I'm doing writing work that is based on my culture and how I was raised and how I grew up, or that lingers around Nigerian culture. Mfaniso is a very big inspiration to me. Ngozi Anyanwu, Wole Soyinka, all Nigerian playwrights who have inspired the work that I do. I love to kind of do really big whimsical worlds. So worlds that feel kind of impossible to put up on stage, but it's quite possible to put it up on stage. Because I want the imagination to run wild for people and audiences. So those are the works that I kind of put up, and I've been lucky enough, I've been exploring that in the last 2 years, and I've been lucky enough to do a couple of residencies, and it's been quite beautiful to be able to actually put the work that I've always wanted to see on display for myself, to kind of put actors in, and maybe even put myself in if I want to explore this character as an actor. I always say if I would like to be in the play, then maybe the play is good. You know what I mean? If I as an actor would love to be in that play, then I'm sure it can stand, it can hold, because I would never want to be in something that I don't enjoy, So, yeah.
How did you meet Mfaniso Udofia? Was it through this process itself, the Ufo family cycle?
No, when I first got into drama school at David Geffen School of Drama, my teacher,
otherwise known as Yale
School of Drama, okay, because that's where we graduated from. My teacher, Gregory Wallace, was Mfaniso's teacher at ACT when she was in school as an actor, and the first play that I ever did full on as an actor was in drama school, and was Sojourners. That was the first play that I ever touched as an actor, for real. And wow. I remember being like, who is this woman? I must know her. And so I went to go, she was doing a play at the New York Theater Workshop. She was doing double plays. And that year it was Run Boy Run and In Old Age. And I remember watching it, and it changed my life. And I actually never got to see Mfaniso face to face until I did a workshop with her at the New York Theater Workshop 4 years later when I had graduated. But I had met her on Zoom. I kind of met my head of acting knew her. So I got to talk to her a little bit, and I was like, you are writing the plays that I've always dreamed to be on. She really is. She's made my wildest dreams come true, really, truly. And my first time seeing her was 4 years after I had graduated. And then one of the first shows, if not the first show that I ever got to play a lead in, was Sojourners. once I got out of school. So I think it's a full circle blessing.
Chris, is there an Emphaniso type figure in your artistic trajectory that you can tell us about?
Yeah, that'd be August Wilson. Um, I, I, like I was telling you, I was in college dabbling a little bit, like taking an acting class, and of my dad's best friend who was a barber. Um, you know, none of my family's none of us are theater people. None of us are in the arts, so I would just get a lot of like teasing and shit, like, "Oh, you an actor, huh? Do some acting." It was like that. But there was this weird moment where my dad's friend Maurice, he had an album, like a 33 of Maureen's Black Bottom, and it was the original Broadway production on a record. And he was like, "Yo, I don't listen to this. You might like this." So I took it home and played it, and I was like, "Oh, what is this? What is this magic?" Do you know what I mean? Because, my mother's British. My dad's side of the family is from Southern Ohio in the Midwest. And I was like, "What? These people sound like my family. Why? How is this possible?" Like, because I had only, been reading, Brecht and Chekhov, and those are all cool. But there was just something about it, and I too had a mentor who saw that I was interested in that, and she actually bought me a ticket to go out to Los Angeles to see Two Trains Running. And in that moment when I saw that play, I was like, I want to do this. I want to do this. I went to graduate school at the Guthrie at the University of Minnesota. And my first professional acting job was at Penumbra Theater, where August Wilson had produced many of his things, and he also had done some stuff in St. Paul. And then just before I graduated, I got to meet him. So, yeah. And it's funny to me that, like, parallels between what Enfaniso was doing around the Nigerian narrative and what August Wilson was doing in, the century cycle. So I'm a big fan of August Wilson, but also just, the scope and epic nature of what Enfaniso is been able to do.
Abigail, what has it taught you about your own heritage? Can you talk to us about your ethnic background, your history, your family history, and how doing this work has kind of maybe influenced your own journey of self-knowledge?
Yeah, I'm Nigerian, Nigerian American, and so I have a different connection to each of the plays, but nonetheless I have a connection to each of the plays. Abasiama's time period in Sojourners is very similar to where my parents came in. So weirdly enough, my parents went to Texas Southern, like Abasiama and Disciple and Ukbong. My parents have lived in Houston. You know what I mean? Like it was that whole time period is quite accurate in terms of there was a whole bunch of Nigerian immigrants coming into the U.S. literally for school reasons, to get their degree from TSU and to go back home. And my father was telling me that it was a time where they had like a counselor or a chandler that was that was promoting Nigerian immigrants to come to TSU and to study and to get their degrees and fly back if they wanted to, or stay and become U.S. citizens. So my parents were in that time period in the 80s and the 90s, and so then that was the connection there. So my parents came to watch Sojourners and was like. My mother was like, "This is strangely accurate." Like she was like, "This is too accurate," and they enjoyed it. They loved it so much, and they were like, "This is so truthful to that American dream and coming to Texas and wanting to be like the Texans." And it was quite beautiful to see my parents experience that. One of their first plays that they ever watched, and the first thing they've ever seen me in. And then Adiaga in the Grove is my generation. It's three kids who raised and born in America and have really, really nice, strict Nigerian parents, and religion is a very heavy in the household. How we carry God, how we exist must be a certain order. Every child must stand up in a certain way. If you're the only boy, you must carry the family. But if you're the first girl, you must carry the family even more. And the middle one kind of doesn't know where they don't know where to place it. It's very similar to, again, it's three of us. 2 girls, 1 boy. There's such a similarity in these stories that I was like, oh, Adiaga is my life story, having to pretend one side for a family and to exist another side in who I am. And then sister is different for me because I'm Igbo and Mfuniso is Ibibio. And the Igbo people really experienced the Biafran War, and Ibibio as well, because we're very close in area. But the Igbo people really experienced millions of us were killed in that war. And Ibibio people were affected by it as well, and especially Disciples' side, they felt the impact of the war. And so it was a part of my history that I actually never experienced because my parents they were around during the war, but they don't talk about it. That's a story that we don't talk about. We don't talk about the scar. My mother doesn't talk a lot about that. Her mother died in the war, and my father's family survived, but he was a young boy, and so he saw a lot. So it's something that they just don't talk about, that I feel like we understand why, because the PTSD of it is quite impactful, and I think is still why Nigeria and Igbo land specifically is fighting for Biafra today. They really want their country back because they've lost so much. So I learned a lot about my history, because even going back home, I can see a lot that they're fighting for Biafra. We need Biafra. We've lost fathers and mothers and grandparents to Biafra. Biafra will live forever. And that's kind of just the way it's always been. And now I got an opportunity to kind of be in that with Run Boy Run. So I've learned a lot about my history through Mfuniso's plays, yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about this whole picture? There's Nigeria as we know it in the West, right? Americans know Nigeria. But then you've talked about Igbo, Ibibio, and Biafra. Can you tell us a little bit about Biafra versus Nigeria versus Ibibio and Igbo?
Yeah, I can tell you as much as I know is that Biafra was fighting to be its own independent country. So the goal was that it would detach themselves from Nigeria. They didn't really like the way they were placed in Nigeria. They didn't like they felt very much so like an ostracized group of people in Nigeria. So their goal was to annex themselves and kind of make themselves their own country. And Nigeria was like, no, we are going to be one nation. And Biafrans were very much so like, we will fight to the death for our country. And so they did. They had their own leaders. They had their own government. They were trying to run the country very much so on their own. And Nigeria at that time, was even a bigger superpower than it is today. But they had the British, of course, their colonizers on their side. So it was very much so brutal. It's people, I think of it very different genocide than the Rwanda genocide, but Igbo people were being shot on the street. They were being killed. And that also went for Ibibio people as well. If you did not identify with Nigeria, it was your life that was on the line. But people were going to fight to make sure that this country, Biafra, lived because they really believed in it and wanted to separate themselves entirely from Nigeria and the abuse.
both Igbo and Ibibio people fighting for Biafra?
Yes and no. Because I think that Ibibio people were in the midst of it happening because they were so close to Igbo land. So I think that I may be wrong, but I do think that Ibibio people were like, well, if it becomes its own country, great, we get to enjoy the benefits of our own country with Biafra. But I don't think they were really on either. They were kind of just like, we just want to live our own lives. And Igbo people kind of were like, come in, you're going to join us. We need extra force. So we need you too. So come on in. And you have felt ostracized with us. But Ibibio people is even a smaller group than Igbos. Because Igbo is the biggest, you have Hausa, you have Yorubas. Igbo is a smaller group, but there's still a lot of us. And Ibibio people are you don't see a lot of Ibibio people even in the States. I don't meet a lot of them because there's such a small group. So their idea is just, we kind of want to keep our existence and our lineage going. If we're eradicated, there may be no more of us. So it was quite sticky because they were kind of forced in, even though they may not have necessarily wanted to be a part of that war.
Chris, this all sounds like fodder for classical storytelling too, doesn't it? I mean, how does it relate to the stories you were telling as a director?
Well, it's funny because earlier I think the Biafran War is like 62, but I realized it's because I had just before I did Run Boy Run, I did a production of Macbeth set in 62. And I was getting the two mixed up because they were both kind of in the 60s, but I think Biafran War was like 67, 68, much later. So that was a mistake that I made. But, it's the human condition. It's a universal story, whether it's, as Abigail's saying, like feeling ostracized, not having any political power in a country, being marginalized around finances and resources. All of that stuff is Shakespearean. You could see that in The War of the Roses. It's the same thing. You can see it in Chekhov, in Three Sisters, And the wonderful thing, I think, though I'm not Nigerian, but I would imagine, and I think Abigail has said this, but to be able to see these universal stories in the context of your culture's narrative is important for people, and, whether it's China, Nigeria, Great Britain, Ireland, Indonesia, Australia, the story doesn't change. The themes don't change. Intergenerational trauma, like in Run Boy Run, is something that every culture has dealt with, But to see it specific to your culture is, I think, quite an important thing, and not enough people have gotten that opportunity. And that's another reason I think what Enfaniso is doing is so wonderful.
So for both of you, we've talked sort of specifically about Biafra, Nigeria, the Ufot world, and in the Nigerian American experience. And we've also talked about the greater storytelling universe. So Abigail, I'll ask you, what do you hope people take away from this experience of hearing this podcast on like that's sort of the micro level? Yeah, let's talk about your immediate community, the Nigerian American community, or the Igbo or Ibibio community. What do you hope they take away from hearing this podcast series?
I hope this is a healing play for them. I really do. I hope that I can play this podcast for my parents, and they could. There would be a feeling of healing in seeing that even through war there was love, and there was a hope and a desire to come to peace, and tranquility. Like they were able to, even through the chaos, sister and boy are still trying to find love and peace. And I think that's what they all were doing. And so I was hoping that this could heal the little girl and my mother, heal the little boy and my father that experienced this war. And also to know that I don't think they've ever seen a piece or know of something or is able to listen or sit down and be able to experience what it was like to go through that trauma. And I also am just quite excited for people to hear Disciples' side. I feel like people, I know that people have seen the other two plays and are like, oh, Disciple, my God, Disciple. But this man has been through a lot. And it's an opportunity for us to hear him and his story. This play is really all about him. And for us to go and see, I see why this woman stays. I see why she needs you and you need her. And that's the most important thing. I don't want people to come out of here being like, it's important to really listen into this play to understand Disciple's side, because his side is his story is quite beautiful.
Chris, you create theater for the Boston community and you have worked all over the country. What do you hope people at large, just the audience, the theater-going audience, or just the people that happen upon this series accidentally, what do you hope they take away from hearing the series?
For me, the thing that's resonating today about this play is that it is so easy to take someone who's come to this country and not know what they are coming from and what they bring with them. I don't just mean that from a place of trauma, but I mean that from a place of possibility. That people that come to this country, there's a possibility for them to make a huge change in the course of history through what they are able to achieve in America. And I think that's very much resonating with me right now with Infiniso's plays. And I mean, if you just look at someone like Abigail, whose parents came over here, and what she is able to do with the craft of acting, what Infiniso is able to do with the crafting of a story and the resonance that it has across not just the Nigerian community in Boston, but the theater-going community. And, when they hear Run Boy Run, the resonances that it will have outside of the area. So I hope people take away a broader understanding and a broader empathy for things outside of their norm and what the world actually has to offer through the immigrant experience.
Well, thank you both so much. This has just been a really, really wonderful conversation.
You've been listening to bonus content for Next Chapter Podcast series Run Boy Run. You can learn more about Run Boy Run and Next Chapter Podcasts at Next Chapter Podcast's website, nextchapterpodcasts.com, where you can find other scripted series and interviews like the Play On podcasts, In the Cards, and others, along with talk podcasts like The 500, The 10, Our New South, Targeted, Beef with Bridget Todd, and a whole lot more. I'd like to thank Jeremiah Tittle, the founder of Next Chapter Podcasts, and our producer, Pete Musto. Our audio engineer, editor, and sound designer is Justin Cortese. Be sure to subscribe to Next Chapter Podcasts for updates on all the latest content, and don't forget to rate and review our shows. That really helps. I'm Michael Goodfriend, and I look forward to sharing more incredible scripted series with you, along with lots of enlightening bonus content at Next Chapter Podcasts.
Lowe's knows that no matter your paint project, saving is at the top of your list. That's why when you shop today, you can buy one, get one free select Valspar and HGTV Home by Sherwin-Williams one-coat coverage interior paints via rebate. Shop these deals in-store or online today at Lowe's. We help, you save. Rebate in form of Visa gift card equal to 100% off the second eligible item purchased before or after applicable discounts, if any. See details. Offer ends 7/9.
Next Chapter Podcasts.